Bundle up and mark your calendars. Blue Door's signature event is back. Join us on February 28th for Blue Door's coldest night of the year, Richmond Hill family-friendly fundraising walk. As part of a nationwide movement happening across the country and close to home, our community will come together to show care and compassion for our neighbors in need. This isn't just a 2 or 5 kilometer walk. It's a chance to take action locally while standing alongside thousands of Canadians from coast to coast. You can register, sponsor, volunteer, and fundraise in support of vulnerable individuals experiencing hunger, hurt, and homelessness in your community during these winter months. Every step makes a difference. For event details, visit cnoy.org/Richmond Hill. Let's walk together for people in need, because it's cold out there. Across the country, close to home, together, you can make a difference. See you on February 28th.
You're listening to On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.
Welcome back to On the Way Home, a podcast about housing, homelessness, and the systems and leadership required to make home possible. I'm your host, Emmy Kelly, and today's episode brings together voices reflecting on Canada's 2025 study tour to Helsinki that was led by the Canadian Housing Renewal Association and the Chartered Institute of Housing. On the podcast today, you will hear from Mohamed Abdallah, co-founder and CEO of Connections for Seniors, and Carolina Ibarra, the CEO of Pacifica Housing. Together, they reflect on what they observed in Finland's globally recognized housing system, what struck them most personally and professionally, and their view of what Canada must do differently if we are serious about ending homelessness. Let's dive in. Welcome, Carolina and Mohamed, to On the Way Home. We're so excited to have you on the show today.
Hi, Emmy. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Eva, for having us. Hi.
We are going to begin with our signature question on this show. What does home mean to you? We'll start with Carolina, and then we'll go to you, Mohamed.
Thanks. That's a great question. A home is something that's more than 4 walls, obviously, and it means different things to different people, like connection. I think to me, it's somewhere where you can be safe, where you can have your own space and reflect and rest. And it's just somewhere where you want to be. I was thinking that as I got back from a vacation, which I'm very, very lucky to be able to have. And then just getting home was really nice. I just wanted to be in my space. And I think that is also something that it is for a lot of people.
It's hard to follow that, Carolina. But I think home is where you recharge, somewhere safe that in order to face life difficulties and challenges, it's where you should go and just relax and recharge and get back to life in order to keep going what you do the best.
So today's podcast is about the 2025 study tour to Helsinki. And I thought to start off with, because just the other day, I received my postcard in the mail. So when we went on tour, at the end of the tour, we were all tasked to write some of the most outstanding or memorable things that we learned on tour. And so I thought, perfect timing. We could take a moment to reflect on our postcard. And when I was looking at mine, I just put myself a couple bullets. And the first one for me was the response I had from our tour guide that was showing us around the housing. And I asked about family emergency housing and where we might find that. Blue Door operates emergency housing in York Region. And he looked at me in total shock and he said, "No, our children do not see shelters." And so my next point was, remember, dignity for citizens is non-negotiable. And for us as, leaders and nonprofit providers in the space, my last reflection was, don't let every out system change. And so I'm really happy to have this conversation with you both. And maybe I'll just ask you to start off with either your postcard reflections or key takeaways. what did you say to yourself? Would you share one moment that really struck you from the site visit or a conversation that stood out to you? Mohamed, we'll start with you, and then Carolina.
Um, I think what the most I took out of this, that ending homelessness and housing solutions is not that difficult. We are the problem, and my kind of oath to that trip was, I'm taking those learnings back to my community, making sure that I'm sharing that, and we are going to apply it to we start with ourselves as an organization to see what kind of change we want to see in the community. For example, we just actually had a meeting today talking about our grand opening for one of our event space, and we will be talking about our housing plan. A lot of it is inspired by what we saw in Finland. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. There is solutions out there. It's all about change. Like, and we're spending almost, I would say, we're spending the same money, like Finland, maybe more as a country and as a community. It's just we're not spending it the right way, and we're not directing it the right way. So it's not a lack of resources; it's a lack of planning, and we need to start looking at it from different perspective in order to find those solutions and work on them. Finland didn't invent anything; they just made the right choices for what the problem is. They didn't act in a reactive way. They were proactive in a lot of ways. And when things weren't showing results in the data, when you look at their data, it wasn't just sloping down all of a sudden. It took a couple of years for them to see some results. They kept working towards it because people are homeless. People need homes. Here, we're building more shelters. We're not investing enough in programs. We are putting a lot of emergency reactions to some of the crises that we have in homelessness, and we're fighting encampments rather than looking actually into putting all these investments into housing. Last week, we were just in a meeting, and someone said the exact same thing. Said we need to spend more money on police enforcement, and I was like, why? So we can lower crime. I was like, we need more programs to alleviate that kind of pressure, and then you will not need that much police. Actually, you might lower the funding for police because you're going to put more programs in communities so people don't have to be incarcerated because they are just on the street. So that mindset needs to be shifted. We need to think a little bit differently, and I think it's on leaders in every community that we came from to present that kind of mindset and start to advocate for it. That's how change should start, in my opinion.
I'll jump right in, I guess. Thanks, Mohammed. That was really interesting. I got my postcard today, and I had totally forgotten about the postcard. And what I wrote was no absolutes, disaster recovery, consistency, be practical, have advocacy, and remember it takes time. So, a little bit about that. With no absolutes, I find that in whether it's in communication or in advocacy, we're always, or in the media, we hear it's one way or another. And what we saw in Finland is there is a system and um, a collection of measures to help people get on their feet and have housing. So, for example, an absolute would be no evictions. And in Finland, they don't see it as no evictions. Obviously, evictions are the last resort. But what they do have, if someone is getting evicted or it doesn't work out in one program or in one place, they have other places that will be better in terms of level of people supports. So rather than thinking of an absolute term, we need to think of what can we support people. The other thing is in Finland, obviously, they've been working at this for 40, 50 years. And what we're seeing, particularly in street homelessness in Canada, is a disaster. We need to look at it first and foremost as disaster recovery. That's what the plan needs to be to get us going on that piece. And we need to be consistent and practical, which is what I think we saw in Finland, is the results of just being consistent over decades and tweaking. And the other thing that was really interesting to me was that all the organizations that we met with all have very strong advocacy departments or people. They're not afraid. It's sort of expected or understood that they need to share with decision makers their experiences, their needs, what works, what doesn't, so that the right decisions are made. And so I think that it's a really good learning to be unapologetic about that, because it's a critical part of policy making to be able to share real world results and impacts. And then the last one is just remembering that it takes time. I think Canada has started taking really good steps, and in BC, for example, we've started doing, our policy makers have supported a lot of the things that Finland has, but it's going to take time and commitment. And it's just a reminder that if we're on the right track, to just stay on it and hold the line and not get frustrated because of setbacks or because we don't have perfection in a year. So those were my takeaways.
Incredible. And I am just reflecting on, I think, something between all three of our reflections that I want to call out is that I believe it actually became embedded in the culture of Finland. So you see it reflected in systems, you see it reflected in organizations, you see it reflected in how buildings are designed, because there is a culture and there is a pride that comes with the idea of caring for citizens, and that no one should be on the streets, and that everyone deserves that dignified housing. But it's backed by action, not just the words, right? It's not just saying it's a right, they treat it as a right. And so we'll think about how Finland is often recognized globally for its approach to housing and homelessness, and maybe build on from what you observed, what most clearly sets their system apart from what we're currently doing in Canada. I know you touched on it a bit, but if we, let's go with you, Mohamed, and then Carolina.
I'd actually, I will boil it down to two points. First, it was political will. And I think I asked that question multiple times. How did that start? A minister came and said, whether you're going to work with us or we're going to tell everybody in the community that you're not working with us in ending homelessness. That kind of change needs kind of top-down leadership to take it on and work on it. I think we do lack the understanding for homelessness and housing issue. A lot of our problems, our solutions that we threw out at the problems are not the ultimate solution. It's painkillers. It's something that is just putting it off for a little bit, but it's not resolving the issue from its core. That's one. Number two, I think how government work with community. They see them as a partner. I was really intrigued by how they are funding these programs. They are not looking at budget lines. They are looking at it as a service purchase. A lot of them said they are leasing our service or leasing our beds. The way they were talking about it, they were more focused on outcomes. So that relationship shaped the outcomes of housing in a very healthy way. And that's why we're seeing that kind of change happening in the community. As you guys mentioned earlier, yes, it is culture, but that culture came with a stream of decisions that they took over the years, and they changed how they are functioning. When I look at sometimes how organizations how their funding is being held for 25 cents and 50 cents because something was wrong, I'm like, you're wasting time. You're not seeing the big picture. And it talks to that. We still talk about people as numbers and money and budgets. We're not talking about outcomes. A lot of the structures that we have now to have oversight over the spending, I think it can be dismantled. You can pay for not-for-profit and community organizations the same you pay for businesses to do your lawn as a government or to do roads or anything else. You don't go to someone that is the contractor that is doing the roads and tell them, which restaurant are you taking your family out to today? You don't do that. You just give them the fee. You let them grow as a business. They did that when one of the presentations we had, we asked them, how are you building housing? They said, we save money from some of the services we get. We get money from the bank. We partner with the government. So they have a leverage with what they have. And there's structure for the service quality that has to be followed. So service is being guaranteed to be on a certain standard. The government is having an oversight on that, along with the community and some other third parties that are doing this. And at the same time, the money that is being going in is to the organization to see how can they spend it the best way possible. This is just one example of how relationship between government and organization can become. This is just one of the biggest, I think, obstacles for a lot of organizations to do better things, that they have to spend sometimes 5% of their budget to make sure that they are reporting it correctly between time, auditing, and other things. They have to make sure, and I'm being conservative with that percentage, uh, make sure that someone will be satisfied looking at the numbers saying, yeah, you spent it all. And to be honest, with professionals around Canada, it will be spent and it will be spent right. But is that the best way to spend that kind of money? And are we doing the best way? Are we following the best practices around the world today in the way we're spending our dollars? And I think 100% from what we're seeing now in places like Finland and Scandinavian countries and Nordic countries, we are not spending it the best way possible. We can do better.
Yeah, I basically concur in different words, but those were my main takeaways. One of them for me was just the commitment. Call it political will, as Mohamed said, but is the commitment to do it. So BC is obviously my experience, professional experience, and what I see is we have all of the elements, but a lot of them are pilot projects. Or when we talk about funding, some new programs are funded appropriately with everything we need, but not all of them. And so there's this patchwork of all of those necessary elements, but there's not a wholehearted commitment to carry them out. We could bring them on to all together and actually do it as a system. It would bring very different and more consistent outcomes. And that relationship with the nonprofits is the same. What I hear a lot of people say when I talk about having gone to Finland to do the study tour, they're like, oh, but it's all social dollars. And there's this idea that the government just has sort of an endless bucket of money. But as Mohamed said, that's not necessarily what we saw. It was very much a business model, is this is the service I have and I will provide for you, and this is what it costs. And there are some standards set, and these are the outcomes. And so, in that sense, it's transactional in a positive sense of the word, because it's really based on what is needed and what are the outcomes, and what are the different ways to get funding to do that. And I think that if Canada could really refocus, we'd go far. I was at a table of providers here a while back, and we had that conversation about funding and the best use, as Mohamed said. And one of the providers said, well, I have these shelters, there's a limited pot of money, and I wanted to talk about how we could take money from here to over here, and then we'd get double the outcomes. And the response back from the funder was, we don't have time for that. We just need on report on those blinds we funded. And I think it's really frustrating having very skilled professionals in the nonprofit sector who know what we're doing. The blinds are, yes, they're important, but they're probably like 0.002% of our budget, when we really could be reshifting what we're focusing on to better apply funding to better outcomes, but we're really limited. And I think that was an area of envy that I have for the folks in Finland, because I think that, again, that wholesale commitment and change in relationship, as Mohamed mentioned, are critical to doing this in a better way.
Carolina, staying with you, let's dig a little deeper, because you lead affordable and supportive housing organizations and partnerships. What practices or system designs in Helsinki felt most transferable to the Canadian housing sector?
I'll say that the vast majority, like, I think we struggle to put saunas in all our buildings, I'm not gonna lie. But other than that, I think a lot of it is transferable. But one of the things that really stood out to me, that, again, speaking of commitment to a process, was their commitment to intake. So they have a centralized place or system where people are assessed for the best fit for housing. And it's based on their needs and supports and availability. And I think that that's something that we've struggled in Canada to consistently have a system where it's where there's access, where there's one access point, but not just to anything, where there are proper assessments so that people are in where they're most likely to be successful in whatever their journey is. So that is just one example where I think that that would be transferable in a really positive way.
And Mohamed, your work centers on connection, dignity, and support, particularly with seniors. What did you see in Finland that reshaped how you think about supportive services alongside housing?
I think one of the biggest thing that I was thinking about as along the journey of the study was we're doing it right, but we're missing the support that we need. We think the same way like them. We look at people the same way they look at them, but they have more support than what we do. They have more freedom to be innovative. They have more leverage to advance their missions than what we do. I think that was mostly every time I was listening to somebody, I was like, we are the same people. Well, there's no difference. The only difference is that your government is different, moving different than our government. That the way you are receiving the funding is different than the way we're receiving the funding. The way you have freedom to be innovative and to create solutions is different than ours. I'm not saying that we have a government that is not thinking good. I'm just saying that we inherited a way of thinking throughout the years that didn't change yet. And it's okay to have a pause and say, what can we do better? Learning from Finland, I think this is what we can do better. We can reshape a little bit the relationship that we have, think a little bit differently, and then move into this. And we will see results in the next 5 to 10 years. I don't think this is a long-term problem if we act correctly.
I like what you said about the heart of the people with boots on the ground being the same. Do you think there were any moments in Helsinki that changed the way you think about the people we serve or reminded you why this work matters?
I'm someone that quit his job and put every single penny of his saving to start an organization. So I'm all in what I'm doing. I think what we do is one of the most important work where we live. And I'm not saying that out of pride. I'm saying that because I think that we are the balance of community between people that want to incarcerate everybody and between the people that don't want to do much about it. We are the balancing point in the community. We are supporting people. Our support makes sure community is thriving, crime rate is lower. There is more resources for people in the community, and I don't think it's being read correctly by the outsiders. People don't understand how valuable it is community work. I think if we need to put actually more advocacy and light to the public on how important that work is for them and for others. I always tell people, if that work don't exist, you will have bigger problems at your doorstep. It will not be something that you hear about in the news or something that you're complaining about, that there's too much money in the budget spent on that area. It will be actually at your doorstep, and you will not be able to solve it because you don't have the skill set to do so. It was more reassuring than changing of perspective in Finland. But also, I value a lot their experience. We reached out to one of the foundations there. We asked them for a partnership that we will be mentored by them moving in our housing portfolio, and they agreed to. And we're supposed to have our MOU in the next couple of months. So we do have to learn from people that have been ahead of us. We have to avail from their experience, and we have to look up to them to try to reach that level of how they achieve things. So yes, we look up to them, we learn from them, but I think we are on the right path with some wrong tools that we need to adjust.
Two things. Congrats, by the way, on your MOU and mentorship idea. One, I want to follow up on that to ask, like, if you're a boots on the ground organization and you were seeing basically what you were seeing in yourself over there, what does that MOU look like? Like, what are you thinking you'll bring over? And two, I want to just go back to what you said about for a guy who's thrown in all his personal investment. Tell us a little bit about what that was for you, please.
I worked in that sector now for over 15 years. My first few years, I moved from top up in an organization in a shelter environment. And then I sat around tables. When you're on a management level, you hear people talking about problems, but nobody's talking usually about solutions. Very rare. And I heard a lot of problems in regards to older adults in my situation. And usually the answer was nobody wants to touch that one. Nobody. And I was like, why? Because everybody think it's going to be very risky or very difficult to tackle. Too much work. Nobody's moving in. And I remember I said that, and I was like, you just need to take a step forward and then deal with it as we go. We do that already in the work that we're doing. None of us really can handle like saying that there's no risk in what we're doing. None of us can say that. We always take risks. We just take risks that we're comfortable with. So let's just take a step forward, and we did. 8 years ago, I asked one of my colleagues to quit her job, and she did with me, and we took every in my situation, it was my retirement money. I was 28 years old. I didn't have much, so we bought the first house to designate it as a shelter and to have an office. And in 2018, it was two of us volunteering, started having income within the first year, and then now we have 65 staff and more and more things. We're gonna have a webinar next month about that to talk about more in details what we really have done. But I think it's a proof that we can solve issues. We don't have to wait for everybody to move with us. We have to keep moving forward. And people will join once they see success. And that was my idea from the beginning. People join you when they see that you can actually do what you're saying you can do. And that's how leadership is. You have to lead, and you have to get something done in order for people to believe and move with you. Not everybody will, but I think enough people will move until you advance that mission and solve these issues.
And tell us a little bit more about the mentoring you have in mind. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that story. So intriguing, and feels very humbling too, about like what can be achieved when we take the no excuses approach and just get out there and take the actions that are needed. So thank you for that.
Thank you. The mentorship idea is we want to make sure that we are learning from others' mistakes too. We want to make sure that we're following the right steps along the way. As an organization that we had nothing, and now we're close to 100 units, and we want to have. My goal is within 5 to 10 years to have 1,000 units as an organization for affordable housing. In order to reach that point, hopefully we don't stop at 1,000. That's just our threshold that we're thinking we can do from there much more, and we can be more self-independent as an organization. But we want to have somebody that tell us, okay, you're doing this correctly. Maybe that needs to be changed. And I think it's going to be very difficult on government level to create that kind of partnerships, but on community, it's much easier. And then we can inform some of those decisions on the government level. We can be more effective on the advocacy level. It can be more effective on our growth journey as we are solving these issues. So we make sure that we're avoiding the mistakes that others did. I'm sure in their 30, 40 years, where they advanced to where they are today, they have encountered a few mistakes, and we would like to avoid those so we can be faster in where we're going. And hopefully that partnership can be something that we can carry on to the rest of our community in Canada to say, this is doable. We can help out with that kind of knowledge as an organization that was a test site in Canada, taking that knowledge, because you can't really copy and paste from any other experience. You have to adopt the knowledge and then try to apply it to where you live. Everywhere in Canada is different. But we have common grounds that we can apply those kind of concepts and theories from their experience. So that is the goal, to set goals, to sit down every quarter to see where we have advanced so far, what can we do better next time, and to learn from their experience on that and offer them what we have, and they offer us what they have. And also we have sharing knowledge to our team so we can grow. I'm sure 3 of us went there, came back with much bigger vision, and we saw things in a different way. Our teams need that too. So I would like to bring that to our team, so our staff and our everybody on our team can actually learn from that and start to think differently. I always say, once you start to go out of the bubble of where you work, you will have much more solutions, because you start to look from the outside and start to see too many solutions out there. A lot of organizations around the world are doing wonderful work, and they have 5% of our problems solutions within them. So the more you see, the more you absorb and the more you solve on your end. So I think that's our goal going along with that partnership in Helsinki.
Love it. That's amazing. And Carolina, maybe I'll just ask you, was there anything from your perspective that changed around like how you view, the people we serve, the work we do on the ground, that change your perspective?
So in terms of the work we do, I want to separate affordable housing from supportive housing a bit, because I think it's taking some different tracks. On the affordable housing side, a lot of it is very similar. I think the main difference that I was reminded of is in Finland, they're building for what is needed. So often in Canada, we build for there's funding per door. And so what will get you further is a studio. But there's not a lot of funding for family housing, for example. And so often, and I will say that I am guilty of this in trying to get projects off the ground. You kind of retract to this box that you're given, that is really just about building the units, and really building is not about units. Building is about the people that are going to inhabit them. So that was more of just a reminder that as we're entering in a real estate market where there's a lot of I'll say in BC, in particular, units left empty, but a lot of these units were being used for Airbnb. They're not really family units. It sounds like we've got lots of vacancy, and we do, because there has been a lot built, but also a lot of the vacancy is there in units that aren't what people need. And so there's still people in need without a unit. So that was just a reminder that we've got to build for people. On the supportive housing front, it was a very different take that I had, and it's going to sound strange, but basically my reminder there was that people are people, no matter what country you're in. The struggles are the same. There are social struggles, regardless of the financial investments. And mental health and addiction are hard on people. And they have the same impacts no matter where you are, what language you speak. And so, in watching the organizations that did supportive housing in Finland and their staff and actually meeting their residents, it reminded me a lot. It's exactly the same as what we deal with here, of the struggles. The people are the same. Again, the physical impacts of severe mental health and addictions, of the drugs may be different, the context may be different, but what it does to the body doesn't change. What is different is how Finland has responded to it. They have just taken practical solutions. So in a way, it was just, in a strange way, it was a bit comforting to see that some of the behaviors, the psychosis, it's not anything we're doing wrong. It's the mental health, it's the drugs, it's the same experience globally. What we can control is how we respond to it. And so I think that was, again, a reminder and a takeaway. I don't know what I expected, but sometimes when you're in the weeds this far and you're seeing the crisis and the news and the folks on the street, you start to think, what is wrong here? Like, what is different? What are we missing? And it's just the solutions and the approach. But the rest of it is not so different.
So I think you already started going there, Carolina, but bringing this back home, how do you each hope the insights from Helsinki will influence your work and the broader housing conversation in Canada over the next few years? Carolina, we'll start with you and then go to Mohamed.
I guess if I was going to say it in one word, it's in confidence. Confidence that we do know what we're doing and what we're talking about. The results that we see here in Canada with the same tools are the results that you see in other places that apply them. We just need to go all in. It's that confidence to share that the areas where we are having difficulties because the system isn't working have been addressed elsewhere with changes that many of us are advocating for. So I think we are in many ways on the right track in Canada. We're on the right track in BC. If we can have a wholehearted commitment at a political level, at a nonprofit level, at a community level, to really continue in the right direction and make the changes that need to be made. And when something's not working and our residents, the nonprofits are saying that that's not working properly, that there's a confidence to say why and that there are solutions that are in fact proven if they are implemented with commitment and wholeheartedly.
I'm supposed to jump in. Sorry. It was so deep that I was thinking about it because it's exactly what we're like. It's the same way. I think what we're bringing back home is solutions. Like again, it's the same problems. The solutions are there. We need now to create awareness about it. So from our perspective, that we will bring that partnership as a credibility and also self-check to make sure that we're on the right path, to create some sort of accountability to the work that we're doing in front of ourselves and also to our partners in the government to say, this works. Give us the chance to prove that it works. Let's work together. So we want to put it into action. Sometimes that people love that about us and sometimes scares people, but it's the only way to work. If you want something to be resolved, you need to do something about it. And I think that's what we're thinking about it as an organization, as a team. Our leadership and board bought into it. The people that know us bought into it. Even speaking to leaders around us in the community and other organizations, they know this is the solution. So for us, it's going to be that step-by-step change that we want to see. Once we have our partners in the government, I think we can see change happening across our province and hopefully across Canada after that.
Mohamed and Carolina, thank you so much for sharing your insights from the Helsinki Study Tour. Your reflections show what's possible when policy and practice come together, and it's clear that ending homelessness and building stronger, more equitable communities is achievable. And I do want to thank both of you for how you work and how your work is continuing to lead the way. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having us so much, Emmy. And it was a pleasure
Thank you so much, Emmy.
Take care. Mohamed and Carolina's reflections from Helsinki make one thing clear. Ending homelessness is not a mystery. It's the result of intentional coordination, sustained political will, and systems designed around dignity and prevention. Their insights remind us that better outcomes are possible when policy, practice, and lived experience are aligned, and when housing is treated as essential social infrastructure rather than a crisis response. Thank you for joining us on the way home and for being part of the growing conversation about how Canada can build stronger, more equitable communities where everyone has a place to call home.
You're listening to On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.